Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode, 72 of Real Hawk Talk. I'm Brian Nemhauser at Hawkblogger on Twitter. And I'm joined, as always, by Evan Hill at Evan Hill SEA. How you doing, Evan?
Good to be back. How are you?
I'm good. We have a lot to catch up on, man. Evan and I were, there was a lot of heated exchanges during the game, and we're gonna have to dissect a little bit of that, and we've already made up. We're bros like that, but got some stuff to talk about. We also have coiffed Nathan Ernst, really looking sharp today. Evan and I both noticed at Nathan 11. People that only listen to this podcast,
they miss out on so much.
Watch the video. They really are missing out on the high quality visual effects that we offer. Nathan, how you doing, man?
Pretty good.
Good. And welcome to everyone that's joining the show. It's always good. We've got an increasing crew joining. Wow, pretty exciting. We actually passed the 3,000 YouTube subscriber threshold this week. Got over 100 patrons. We're charging our way towards 200 patrons. Very cool. And we've had, I think, over 100,000 people watch the show over the past month and listen to this show. So, I mean, it's awesome. It's awesome. We've had a lot of success. Folks are excited about the Seahawks, excited to hear any conversation. Obviously, if they're listening to us, they'll listen to just about anything. So it's good to have folks here, and we're getting some regulars in the chat. It's always good to check in with folks. I see Ryan Cleveland, Alana. I'm assuming it's Alana. It might be Elena. She's already got her all caps on, and she's going at it. So it's great. It's a lot of fun. If you haven't already joined at patreon.com, please do. Patreon.com/Hawkblogger. It's real quick. You can sign up just as a patron to support the show, support the site, support what we're trying to do. As you know, we donate to charity every year. We are committed to donating at least $10,000 a year to charity. And ideally, I want to make that $20,000 a year. That's roughly what we've been doing lately. And then we also want to use some of the additional funds to help support the show, make the show better, grow it, and make it a better experience for you guys. Maybe figure out how to help Nathan and Evan get appropriate green screening technology on their laptops. That might be possible. Additionally, I would offer, if you haven't already subscribed to YouTube, please do that. If you haven't subscribed on Spotify or iTunes or Google Play, super easy to do. Leave us a review. We really appreciate that. And, just talk to people about the show. We are working on trying to get some swag. I personally, I'd like to have either a magnet for my car, a sticker maybe, talking about, wouldn't mind a hydro flask. There's a few things that would be pretty cool to have. And so we're pushing Will from Rain City Series to help us out with that. So we're looking to get some swag soon.
I would love an Establish the Body Blows t-shirt with the Hawkblogger logo on the bottom middle.
Yeah, I'm sure you would rock that, and there'd be all sorts of irony thick with. I think you may end up finding out that it's gonna be one of those shirts that in the sun that Pete Carroll's face comes out on your back and you won't know about it, and we'll figure out how to make that happen.
That would actually be amazing. So we have an update on Jeff. I don't know if you guys saw. He's driving back from his baseball championship game, which went extra innings. Didn't say if he won or not, though. So I'm guessing maybe not great news on that. So
he plays a lot of baseball/softball. He might be on the wrong podcast. He's a Blue Jays fan, but he's welcome to talk about the Mariners, because I know there's a lot of people dying to talk about the Mariners. Okay, so there's a bunch to go over, and one of the things we're going to cover, we've got patron questions, by the way. Another benefit of being a patron, we're going to go over some of those. We got some really great questions from patrons. We'll cover those later in the show. We got to talk about this game. I think that there hasn't been a game that's resulted in this much acrimony and different takes. Like, people walked away from that game, and it wasn't just us. Like, in the Real Hawk Talk chat, we were all like, there was definitely divisions of like how we were reacting to that game. It was super strong reactions. And we're seeing it not just there. Brock and Salk were arguing like cats and dogs this week. You know, it was all over Twitter, and it's just interesting. I think it's worth kind of figuring out why. Like, what was it that was triggering people? We'll talk about that a little bit. Hopefully do it in a way that doesn't, you know, cause any of us to just hang up the call. But we'll go there. And then, you know, we got to talk about this team and what's coming up for this team. We've got a game against the Cardinals, and what's going next, and how good is this team? And you know, I think it's worth kind of getting back into that conversation. And there's been some changes. We had a trade. We've got some movement on the practice squad. So guys being signed to the 53-man, people being cut, draft picks being cut. You know, some of my priors are getting confirmed. So of course we're going to talk about those. But anyway, let's get into it. I'm going to be gracious because I like to be so. I want to start, Evan, by giving you the floor to talk about, you know, that game obviously frustrated all of us. That is the one unifying factor. We were all pissed. Like, the Seahawks should have never lost that game. That was incredibly frustrating. When you were watching it, what in particular, and even in review, what about it really sent you sideways?
Yeah, I think this may be a little bit cliche to say, but like, from the moment they took the field in the first quarter, this team just felt like they looked unprepared. They looked a little lackadaisical, like almost just in their body language. It kind of frustrated me that it just seemed like they were fucking around a little bit and they weren't ready to play that day. I think, you know, we played the blame game in the post game show, Nathan and I did, but you know, there were a lot of parts that failed on Sunday, whether it be special teams, Chris Carson, game management decisions by the coaches, you know, a few Russell Wilson overthrows or underthrows. He was low on a few balls. Anything that could go wrong felt like it did go wrong on Sunday. And I think one thing that really frustrated me was I got my hopes up in the end that somehow they were going to pull this game off and pull out a win in the end. I hate myself for having hope like that, but you know, we've seen this team do some crazy things over the years. But I think over you know, really the course of the entire game, I feel like there were a lot of avoidable mistakes. You know, the special teams punt return was a complete disaster. Nobody stayed in their lane. We got absolutely blown up, you know, to start the game there. Really killed the vibe, you know, from the offense and defense point of view. Chris Carson fumbling is a huge problem. You know, I mentioned it in the post-game show, but he's matched his 2018 fumble totals in 3 games through 2019. Adding that Rashad Penny was inactive that day because he had injured himself Thursday or Friday. Carson's issues really posed like a real liability, I think, on the team. You could argue that Carson has caused a minimum. Carson's mistakes over the past 2 weeks have caused a minimum of 14 points, maybe 17 points over those 3 fumbles. So the Chris Carson issue is a true liability. I'm really curious to see how this team manages him going forward. But on the other side of the ball, like, or I guess on the sidelines, I really felt like, and this isn't all on Pete Carroll, but I felt like there were a lot of coaching missteps that were not typically things that happen in, you know, Pete Carroll coach football games or Brian Schottenheimer coach football games. I went through a list, you know, that we had talked about in the post-game show, and I'll just mention some of the things that frustrated me. Punting on the opponent 39 on the second drive of the game. I thought, you know, what did they net? Like 19, 20, 22 yards of field position. I know it was raining. I know it was a little windy, but, you know, Nathan brought up a great point. You're paying Jason Myers $4 to $4.5 million a year. You know, if you're treating him like a Pro Bowler and you expect him to be at that level, I'm kind of surprised they didn't kick it. So I was disappointed by that. I think obviously the missed timeout in the first half was a Pete Carroll problem. He admitted it himself. Tedrick coming onto the field to get that penalty was tragic. That's not really, it's kind of like a coaching thing, but it's kind of not. That's just a player discipline issue that is super frustrating to me. Those things absolutely should not happen. The run on 3rd and 6 in the third quarter after the fumble recovery, on the special teams play, that was just mind-numbing to me. Russell Wilson was playing really well throughout that game, and I can't believe they took the ball out of his hands and punched it down the gut and ended up getting no points off of it. So that was really gross to me. Not going for 2 on that fourth quarter drive. I just felt like there were a lot of easily preventable mistakes if they had showed up prepared and ready to roll on Sunday. And it just didn't look like they did. Everything that, pretty much everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, with the exception of like 3 players. 3 players I thought played really well. Russell Wilson, KJ Wright, who was all over the field, played a great game. And then Tyler Lockett, I think, had a great game also, matched his, or I think beat his career high in receptions, had a really good game. So I know I just ranted a lot, but I think that's my take.
If you could have any one of those back, which one would you want?
Probably the Carson fumble. Wasn't it returned for 7? I think probably the Carson fumble, because, and I'll tell you why. It's not even because of that. Like fuck that game. We're gonna lose that. Let's just say we lose that game regardless. Purely for Carson's confidence level, like moving forward. Every other question Pete Carroll is being asked is, Carson's fumbling a lot. How are you going to manage his situation? This offense without Carson, for as much as we say running backs don't matter, I think it is a downgrade to Rashad Penny or anybody else. So I think purely from the confidence perspective, it's really concerning.
Nathan, as you're watching that game and then you come back afterwards and you think about it some more, what was your general reaction to that game? Like where it sounds like you played the blame game, but what were your takeaways from that game?
I mean, immediately after the game or during the game, it just really clearly was just a stupid game, and they just shot themselves in the foot over and over again. And it got out of hand early enough that I was fine by the end of the game. It didn't bother me. I was just like, this is stupid. They fumbled and got returned for a touchdown. Not only do you fumble and not only do you lose it, but then get returned for a touchdown. You don't see that happen a lot. And the punt return and the stupid penalties and the stupid coaching stuff. And so it was just one of those where okay, everybody just went out and completely crapped the bed. Just move on to next week, right?
The thing that was frustrating though, Nathan, is it felt like that game, if they had showed up, and were prepared, I felt like they could have won that game. And that's not shitting on the Saints team, but Teddy Bridgewater is not that good.
And the thing that hurts about it is that Russ was really good in it. And for long stretches, the offense felt like they were really good. And then they would fumble, and then they would go for it on 3rd and 1 and not get it. Well, I mean, you go for it on 3rd and 1, but then they go for it on 4th and 1 and they still don't get it. They just found different ways to stall and give the ball to their team. And so it really did feel like they wasted a pretty great Russell performance. But I mean, the thing that really got under my skin though was the comments from Pete Carroll afterwards. That was when it hit me. And that was when I got mad about the losses, saying that he is glad he didn't go for it on the 4th down on the 39, that he shouldn't have gone for it on a couple of the other ones, that he just straight up admitted to being asleep at the wheel on the DK catch. And then just that weird ass comment about wow, Alvin Kamara's pretty good, huh? We didn't see that coming. What are you doing? So yeah, Pete went and rubbed a bunch of salt on the wound. And so that was hard. But my main takeaway from it was and I think this is why it's been so contentious, is that you can fall back on whatever priors you have. If you hate Pete Carroll, you can rant a lot about Pete Carroll. If you hate Chris Carson, You never thought he was that good. You can rant about Chris Carson. If you hate passing and you hate the nerds, you can rant about how, look, Russ threw for 400 yards and they lost. Like, everybody kind of crapped the bed on this. And so you can argue about whatever. There's blame to go around. So like we can all retreat into our corners and yell about the thing that we want to yell about. And we're all right. Like that's the thing.
That, you know, listening to you both, that was what was so surprising to me. Even during the game, it was so clear to me that this was like going wrong in all sorts of places. And the part that triggered me, frankly, was that it felt like there was conversation about that there was one part of that was much worse than another. And in this case, it was coaching, like was coming up as like the reason that the coaching really blew this game. You know, as Jeff joins the show, hey, at Real Jeff Simmons on Twitter, did you win? Is what everyone wants to know.
In softball, we just had the equivalent of the Jermaine Kearse Packers championship victory.
Did you play the role?
Were you involved, or were you just, you know, on the side?
I was involved. Our team was down 12 runs. We have a 7-inning game in the 6th inning, and we came back and won in the 7th inning in walk-off fashion. So I was delayed an extra 15 minutes. Thought I'd be home a lot earlier, but yeah, we won. I'm ready to talk ball now.
Congrats, man. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's just rec softball, but it's still fun.
Doesn't matter. Competition's competition. It feels great. So
yeah, it's pretty cool.
Anyway, we're just talking about, you know, takeaways from the game, and Evan just gone off and
I missed it.
Evan was very measured. Really?
I will respond to what you just said, Brian, in terms of you saying like everybody had, you know, a piece of the blame. I will say, and maybe you disagree with me on this, if coaching had like a good game, if Pete Carroll had a good game, if Brian Schottenheimer had called an exceptional game, I think they win that game despite those errors. I really do believe that.
I think that's crazy. So let me explain why. I mean, I'll first of all just say my overall takeaway was very similar to Nathan's, which is every aspect of this team fell apart in that game. Like everything, there was enough of a gap between how good Seattle was versus New Orleans that it took all of those things going wrong for them to lose that game, right? Everybody had to do something bad. Even Russell, and people like, I think misunderstood my tweet, but I don't even really care. Like even Russell, there was a couple of plays I think he would have wished he had back and could have made a difference in that. So it wasn't that he was on the list of things that were problems with this game. He wasn't on the top 8, maybe even the top 10, but he was on the list. Like he did some things that definitely contributed to them not winning. And so the shock to me was that coaching was coming up as the top one for so many people, because I look at it, I'm like, if Pete had made all the different decisions that everyone wants him to make, but you still had Al Woods lining up in the wrong freaking place and turning 0 points into 7, if you still have Michael Dixon kicking the worst punt of his career and, you know, terrible punt coverage leading to a score, and you had Chris Carson fumbling again and having it returned for a touchdown, where not only that happened, but none of the offensive players even tried to tackle because none of them thought it was an actual fumble. Like, that's 21 points. They wouldn't have won. Like, I still don't think they would have won. So like,
Brian, this is how I would respond to that.
And those are, it's a stretch to me to say that the majority factor in those 3 situations was a coaching issue. I think those are all pretty clearly physical mistakes or, you know, errors by the players. And I just would want us as fans, like, it doesn't really matter, but like integrity and like fairness is like, fairness is a third rail topic for me. And I think it's very unfair to not put accountability on the players for their role in that game. I thought the players really blew it in a lot of ways. And one more thing, and I'll let you get in. It is also, the irony is incredibly thick that the game that is the tipping point game for so many people about Pete Carroll and his approach is a game where the game plan on offense often was what so many people have asked for. And I'm not talking about the second half when they went to throwing because they had to. That's different. But look, I mean, this is what I was going to bring up for you earlier, Evan. Like, passing, like first down over the first 3 games of the year. What percentage of plays on first down for the Seahawks over the first 3 games do you think are passes?
I'd say like 55%, maybe 60%.
You guys have any roughly different feelings about 55%?
Yeah, I'd say like 60%.
So more passes than rushes is what you all are feeling like. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're actually right on. It's 55%. What would you say the LA Rams are in terms of their first down pass ratio?
I think I read today they've gone the other way. I think they're like last in the league passing on first down.
38%.
Yeah, I read that today. I was surprised.
33 passes, 55 runs. What about Dallas? The new like up and coming. Everybody that's a nerd loves what Dallas is doing on offense. What's their pass rate on first down?
Well so hold
on. Just answer the question. What's the pass rate on first down?
Second to last.
34%. 34%. So Kansas City, the other like favorite, their pass rate on first down is 56%. So they're roughly the exact same as the Seahawks. There are a lot of that's just one stat, but you can go through a number of these pieces to say in neutral script situations, the Seahawks are passing more than they ever have. Russell Wilson is playing better than he ever has.
That's neutral script?
That's first down. But if you go to neutral script, the Seahawks are passing more than they ever have.
I would be very interested to know those first down numbers in neutral script for like Dallas and KC, who have had huge leads for significant chunks of their games so far. Yeah.
Yep. So in any event, I think that that's part of the irony here for me is I think that the threshold is being moved. It's like, okay, so now they're doing some of the things that everyone's been saying, God, when are they're never going to do it. Pete Carroll's never going to do it. They do it. They still lose, and it sucks that they lost. It's like, yeah, but Pete Carroll just sucks. He'll never change. It's like, but they're changing. So, like, it's just a frustrating, like.
What were your reactions to his comments, though?
Oh, man. I was so frustrated with that game. I didn't give a shit what Pete said. Like, I mean, whatever. The thing that I respected the most about what Pete said is he said, I had a terrible game.
Yeah, that's fair.
He didn't hide from it one bit. He was like, I had a bad day. I made a number of the decisions he said he had made bad decisions about. I'm sure all of us would feel differently than what he felt. That matters less to me. Like, I respect leaders that take accountability for not doing their jobs well. And
100%.
I mean, it was whiplash. So it was like, he's owning up to it. That's cool. I appreciate the accountability. And then he was like, yeah, I shouldn't have done all those good things I did. And it's like, wait, what are you talking about?
Yeah. I had to listen like 3 times to like over different press conferences to know which things he was regretting. Cause it was so surprising. Like, wait, that was what you were like, what? I mean, the going for it on 4th down at the end of the half. I don't know. I mean, he said a lot of stupid things. Pete said stupid things forever. Marshawn said stupid things. Like, I mean, it's not an intelligence test. Like, I'm looking for how they're setting up the team for football. And also, I have to admit, I know I'm ranting on this as well, but everyone's like, man, we got killed. Like the defense looked like shit. Teddy Bridgewater sucks. The whole offense had 265 yards. Teddy Bridgewater didn't do anything. Alvin Kamara had like 70 yards rushing, under 4 yards a carry, and that was with 16 missed tackles. Like, I mean, if they had just tackled normally, and yes, some of it absolutely has to be accountable to Kamara being a great back, but like there were just so many mistakes, and like it was just so weird to me. And it was also disheartening that all of that was like, okay, we're going to blame one guy. And ultimately it is one guy that's responsible for the way the team plays. But when anything goes well, when Russell plays well, and Russell played well in this game, none of the credit goes to the coaching. It's all Russell. It's just like, that's just stupid. That's just not real.
Brian, my frustration with this game was not how they started drives. passing on first and second down. Great to see. We're seeing an uptick in percentage on that. That's awesome. They absolutely are adjusting in that realm. It's not how they're starting drives. It's how they're finishing drives. And that's what was so problematic for me in this game. Second drive of the game, they punt on the fucking opponent 39. Opponent 39 to gain 20 yards of field position.
That was ridiculous.
Like, that is, I can't handle that. That's like, you don't have Mark Sanchez at quarterback. You have Russell Wilson at quarterback. Take the fucking risk. You know what I mean? Like, put up points. Put up freaking
or
points.
Or kick the field goal.
Or kick the field goal with your $4.5 million per year kicker, Jason Myers.
0 field goals on the year, and my boss drafted him on my recommendation. Well, I'm in hot water with that.
Thank you. No, he did miss in Pitt. Okay. It was a 59-yard field goal, whatever.
No, see, Brian, the only reason that Evan is mad is that he robbed him. Pete robbed him of an opportunity to do a victory lap about Jason Myers.
Damn right. I was going to tweet about it. I had my tweets prepped and everything. I had drafts ready to go. I had saved drafts ready to go. But like I said, Brian, it's not how they start drives right now. It's how they're finishing drives. Another drive that they finished poorly. End of the first half. Pete was not prepared for an explosive play. He didn't call a timeout.
Oh,
they pissed away 3 points, though. Yep. They lost the game by 6 fucking points. Take that drive, make it a field goal. Jason Myers is going to kick it 100%, no doubt in my mind. So that was DK Metcalf caught that ball on like the 15-yard line. That's an automatic field goal. So that's 3 points right there. Another play in the third quarter. They run the ball on 3rd and 6. That was after this. Exactly.
I think that's shoddy more.
Shoddy coaching. I'm just saying coaching in general here was a problem. So I'm not going to assume that drive was a touchdown. Let's say it's not a touchdown. But if you take those 3 drives where they critically fail towards the end of the drive, if that's a field goal on every single drive, that's 9 points and they win the game. If in the best case scenario is, hey, both of those 2 drives where it went deep into enemy territory, 14 points, and then the DK Metcalf catch, to end the first half is 3 points, is 17 points. That's why I'm saying, like, I truly believe, like, it's not. I agree with you, Brian. I do want to give credit to the coaching staff here. They're passing more on first and second down. We're seeing adjustment there. That is encouraging, yes. What is not encouraging is how they're finishing drives. What I feel like is in cowardice. Like, they need to be more aggressive when they're in opponent territory.
I'm going to let you get in here, Jeff, but I got to respond to that. I think I know what you mean, but I don't think it's really finishing drives, because the Seahawks, the number 1 team in the NFL in red zone touchdown rate, it's your Seahawks. They're 8 for 9 in the red zone. Like, they're finishing drives damn well, better than any other team in the league. I think what you're saying is they're squandering scoring opportunities. And we saw that in the Pittsburgh game at the end of the first half when, they were in field goal range and all of a sudden they're not. And so I get some of that, but I just wanted to get in and clarify there. Jeff, you haven't had a chance. Right. Why don't you jump in here?
So it's interesting where Evan's coming from, and I understand why the situational errors are annoying. And Pete's been bad at that for years. My personal take on the coaching kind of comes from a different perspective. And if you guys saw our chat, I was pretty annoyed with the coaching, but not as much for botching the obvious, not going for 2 or wasting time out. That stuff Pete's just not good at. I've kind of accepted it at this point. It's annoying, but he's been doing this for 10 years, and he just, for some reason, I don't know, Tater's gone. It still hasn't gotten better. So whoever he's using just isn't. What kind of annoyed me is, I don't know, I was watching the Chiefs game out in the early session and watching how they played and how the Ravens played, and the way Seattle just approached the game kind of irked me. And I know a lot of comments have come out, and we had a good talk in our chat today about Pete's kind of philosophy, but what kind of bothers me, and Danny O'Neill with ESPN 710 wrote a great article kind of summarizing my thoughts from the game pretty well. What kind of irked me about this game is just the way that they think they have to win now. And Pete still wants to play that great defense, play close games, keep it tight, play. like let these inferior quarterbacks make mistakes. I kind of hate that mentality. And I think it kind of stems back to Pete's overall philosophy probably the part of his philosophy I hate the most is that you can't win in the first quarter stuff. I think it stems back from that. And because of that, now they start slow every year. And we just accept this as, oh, we do this every year, so it's okay. And they've played awful in both their home games. They've played awful. And to me, that's just not okay. And the fact that they're approaching it and us as fans and on Twitter, and we're just like, let's forget about this. I think this is a problem. And I don't think they can play like that because they don't have the defensive personnel they had when they could win like that in 2015 and 2014, the Super Bowl years. This is a different team. They have a decent defense that might come around once their defensive line gets going, but their secondary doesn't look particularly interesting. And their best assets are on offense, and they're not a great running the ball team right now. Their run blocking has been terrible. You guys have probably talked about their low success rates. They've been awful if Bertino wants to run the ball. And it's nice to see them passing more, but I just think they have to try to win differently. And the fact that their game plan in this game against Teddy Bridgewater, I remember they did it at Arizona last year in a game they probably should have lost. That took a Seabass field goal at the last second to win. It reminded me a lot of that. And the fact that they're still trying to win like this irks me. And I know the situational stuff, I don't want to just blame the coaches for the game. I think if you're going to take any blame at anyone, it has to be the players. Players made 3 critical mistakes. I still believe if Carson doesn't fumble that ball, they win the game. I thought that play swung the game so bad. They were starting to move out of their own end. I personally believe that if that doesn't happen, they win the game. So I think that's where most of my blame would go. But more than the situational stuff, more than some of Pete's moronic comments he's made in press conferences and interviews, just that mentality still bothers me. And I think I'd like to see them adjust and kind of be more aggressive because that's the kind of team they have and that's how they have to win. Their margin for error.
That's, I understand.
Yes, tell me if I'm wrong.
I've made that. I mean, I wrote an article after the 2012 playoff loss in Atlanta, specifically talking about this notion and that this was a flaw and a blind spot for Pete. And I even talked to Pete about it. And I was like, is this a chance? You talk all the time about words lead to actions, and there's a reason you say things and you have a mantra and you come back to it because it brings focus to it and makes you improve on it. Is this a place you should you really be saying it? You can't win a game in the first quarter. Is that really what you want to be saying? Is it more, it's not just how you start, it's also how you finish. I mean, there's weaker words, but do you really want to focus on that? It doesn't matter how you start. And that's kind of how he's set up his language. And I do think that it's a flaw in his philosophy. I absolutely do. But then I'm like, all right, what realistically are we asking for there? Are we saying we want to take more aggressive shots downfield? I would say if you look back at the Cincinnati game, I think they were starting out aggressively. I think if you look at the Denver game last year, I think they were starting out aggressively. And their offensive line could not hold up, and they got their asses kicked. They got it handed to them. And so, I think one of the things that was encouraging this year is that, they managed to win 2 games where they didn't play well, and yet, and Brian Schottenheimer looked like he was going to be able to start, sticking with the pass game that he was doing. And now they blew a game that I think we all thought that they should, everyone thought they should have won. So, Nathan said at the beginning, I just wonder, some of this is man, the Seahawks, they blow a game every year, multiple times a year that you're just oh my God, how in the world did you lose this game? 2014 team started the year, they lost to Nick Foles and the Rams that was a 4-win team or something like that. That was a Super Bowl team. So I don't want to just sweep it under the rug, but I do then to get back to what are the fundamentals of this team and where they look strong, where they look weak. The offense is showing some signs. The offense, the passing game is looking promising. I think some of the weapons are developing. The defense is also showing some signs. This game, I can't believe that the Seahawks gave up no sacks and 2 quarterback hits on offense. If you had told me that before the game, I would not have believed that was possible against the Saints defensive line. I thought they had a massive advantage there. So I don't know what it all means, but you know, I don't look at this game and think it's like even in the top 10 of worst losses during the Pete Carroll era.
Really?
No.
The problem is just that like they're all the same.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and like you said, I mean, like this is not a new flaw, right? It's a failure in Pete's like risk reward assessment here. And I mean, people are gonna say, you know, look, he's won a ton of games doing it this way, and they're right? But he's also lost games doing this, and sometimes it's stupid games like that Tampa game or this game, and sometimes it's the Cowboys game last year, right? It just, and with Russell Wilson, it just feels like just so extreme. Like you could open it up a little, you could be a little more aggressive, you can give yourself a little bit of a buffer. Like this team had just about everything go wrong. And I mean, they scored a meaningless touchdown with 0 seconds left to get it as close as it was. It was not that close of a game, but like they were kind of still in it, right? And you take back, I think obviously the Carson thing, you take that, the fumble and the touchdown, you take that back. Obviously that makes a huge difference. But like, I think that if Al Woods doesn't have that penalty, they probably win this game.
I think you're right.
And so like, we're talking about a play or two in this disastrous game, and like just give yourself a little bit more buffer for when these things go wrong, because clearly no matter how much he preaches turnovers and no matter how much he says special teams matter, like you're just gonna have shit happen. Like shit happens. That's a saying for a reason.
Like that all makes sense, except the part that just seems like a logic leap for me is that there's just a different way that they could call the game that would give them more room for error, and that we know that to be a fact. I mean, of course you'd like to have like a bigger lead or play better in some way, but I don't know that. I think that there's the implication that somehow fans know that if they just did this, that they would have more room for error.
Well,
I don't know that I believe that's the case. Like,
it's stuff with like when Pete says the day after that he shouldn't have gone for it on 4th and 1 and should have pinned them deep instead. It's stuff like that where it's like that shouldn't be his mentality. He got stopped on 4th and 1. His offensive line got beat. Like, if your mentality is we should have punted there, that's the stuff I think Nathan and I and Evan are referring to.
Yeah,
and it's juxtaposed with Harbaugh going out there and talking about going for 2 and how that gives them an edge. And you know, I don't know if anyone, like that was the sound bit that everyone picked up, but if you listen to the whole thing, Harbaugh talked about it. He's like, no, I don't go with the analytics all the time. He's like, I get yelled at by the analytics guys all the time. They want me to go by the analytics way more than I do. When it's 50-50 type stuff, when it's 52% one way or, you know, 56% one way, he mixes in his guts. He reads the situation. He takes context into it. But like, he was very adamant that going for 2 in those situations gave them a better chance to win, and that he's going to keep doing it because like it really is just like proven at this point that these things give you a better chance to win. I mean, that punt from the Saints 39, there's the surrender index now, and I don't know what all goes into it, but it was in the 99.7th percentile of surrendery punts. Like it was as cowardly, and we talked about using the word cowardly with Carroll today, and I don't really like that in a lot of situations, but that was just cowardly. That was just surrendering. And so, you know, I think a lot of that stuff just has to get better. And that he came out the next day and was saying that when he did go by the numbers and when he did do the things that helped the team, that he regrets that. Like that was the kick in the gut for me.
Yeah, I think we've hit that on multiple angles, and I think you know, my point of view continues to be there was a pretty much complete team collapse across the board, and coaching staff. Like if anyone's hearing me is like Carroll apologist here, I'm not. I agree with pretty much everything you guys said about the things that he did that he should have done differently and his philosophical challenges. I also just see that I agree that even with the way Pete coaches, in those situations, his team should have won this game if his players hadn't made like any one of a number of really bad mistakes. And so you kind of get the good with the bad no matter who you have. And I still see that this team overall is better off having someone like Pete Carroll in charge. And you just hope that there's more evidence of him starting to adapt and change and listen to his coordinators and listen to analytics more and all those kinds of things. But yeah, this game to me was not the lasting indictment of him. But I understand now a little bit better why for you guys it was really it was a bitter pill.
What concerns me about this game is I feel like it's going to come to bite us in the ass so hard when it comes to playoff seeding.
Oh yeah.
I just know it's going to. This is not an AFC loss to the Steelers where a conference, win-loss ratio comparison is not a factor here. This is a factor. They're an NFC team. So I think it's going to stay.
This was brutal. There's no way around it. It's not quite as brutal as the Mariners playing the Astros and going 1-18 in a season against a single opponent. But
that happened?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Like I just am looking at the score now. It's the top of the sixth, and the Astros are up 2-0. But yes, they're 1-17 against the Astros so far this year.
Do you guys realize that our very own Cable Thanos destroyed the Mariners?
No.
He made a Mariners hype video this past season, and they were like, remember they had started off their season like 14-2 or whatever, and Cable Thanos, Joshua Cashman, if you're listening, makes a hype video for them, and all of a sudden it just goes completely off the rails.
Let's talk about that for a second, a little bit longer, because there was another thing that didn't happen last week after a win, and
oh yeah,
I kind of feel like there's some responsibility in this crew that needs to be called out. Like I was waiting for a Cable Thanos video after our triumphant, big win in Pittsburgh, and it never came.
Yeah, the Mariners don't need any help jinxing themselves, but that might have done the Seahawks in. We didn't even get a crab video or nothing.
Nope.
Yeah. Seahawks feed off meme energy, and we're just not getting it.
We may need to just create a video of him playing the ukulele on loop until he produces again. That was if we're playing the blame game, I think a little bit goes up to Bellingham. So just keep that in mind, Josh, when you're cutting up the pod today. So let's move on a little bit. Let's take some questions from patrons, and we'll go around robin here. Each of you guys can take one of these, but let's start with you, Jeff. And the first question we're going to go with here is from Jose Rodriguez. Thank you for being a patron. And his question is, who is going to be the upgrade from Effetti next year, if not sooner? And I'll add to this, George Fant is currently the highest graded pass blocking lineman on the Seahawks, according to PFF, and outperformed Dwayne Brown in this past game. So, yeah, answer Jose's question and add to it. Like, why is George Fant not pushing for snaps right now?
Honestly, I don't know. We hear about competition all the time, and the comp's always on. But I asked Joe Fant today. I kind of sent him a DM to ask that question. He tweeted out that they like Fant in his role, and doesn't seem like the comp is on. So I don't know how Effetti could not be battling for a spot based on how he's played. To answer your question directly, I think George Fant is the right tackle of the future. I think they're going to sign him to an extension either after the season or probably after the season. I think he's the guy there. It doesn't seem like Jamarco Jones is getting much of a look at right tackle. He seems like Dwayne Brown's backup. But I think he's the guy who's going to – I don't see them – there was a lot of talk on Twitter before the season that Effetti was a guy they had to re-sign. He was underrated. I want no part of him going forward. I would not pay that guy almost anything.
Is Ben still saying that, by the way? Mr. Ball?
Ben is silent on the matter.
Ben has been very conveniently silent.
Yeah.
And this is, Ben B. Baldwin calling you shit out. Ifedi is not a $17 million per year tackle. That's garbage. Sorry.
He's
trash.
He slid all the way back to Ifedi, and I think not only for Evan, but maybe for all of us. He
sucks. I think George said.
I've been saying it since day one. He should not be a starter on this football team.
Yeah.
I agree.
All right, so let's go next to Nathan, and this relates to something I think you talked about. But Michael Hendrickson asks, thanks for being a patron, Michael. He says, is it possible that the Seahawks' slow offensive starts are due in part to game scripts designed to probe defensive tendencies? And last year's playoff game notwithstanding, do you think Brian Schottenheimer does a good job of analyzing defenses and making mid-game adjustments?
So yeah, this is a cool question. We talked a lot about it today in the group chat. So the first question, do I think that they intentionally start slow or these slow starts are related to them trying to gain information? I think that's definitely true. I don't think that's good. If you look at how Seattle starts in their first 15 games so far this year, they're worse than Miami. And, you can see very good offenses like Kansas City and other ones that do much better. And so, when you talk about misjudging the risk reward of these things, I think how they start games and how they feel about getting information is definitely one of the areas where that's a big problem for them. And I think this goes to just like overall philosophy too. I think that if you look at some of these games we talk a lot about how they play down to opponents, and I don't really think that's actually what's happening. At least I don't think that they're unprepared or that they don't take them as seriously. It's that they just straight up disrespect bad teams. And they were kind of open about it against the Bengals. One of the things was the Bengals is they sat Ansah. He ended up setting another week, so maybe that wasn't so much a part of it. But they were pretty honest about just playing vanilla, and they played base the whole time, and that's kept up a little bit too. But you can look back and see these games where they play down to these bad teams, and they kind of go vanilla. And I think part of that is just them not wanting to put anything on tape. It's this whole it's a conservative mindset, but it's also this idea that they're, I think they're just trying to avoid. They want to feel the teams out, and then they want to try to adjust, and then and they don't want to put stuff on tape that they don't have to. And I think that all kind of comes together in a lot of the complaints we have about how Carroll approaches these games and these slow starts and the whole you can't win it in the first quarter thing. As to whether Shotty's been good at adjusting, I think. I don't know. It's a good question. I think we used to give Bevel a lot of credit for this too. That they would have these big second half adjustments. I don't know if he's actually particularly good at it, or if it is just that they're so conservative in the beginning that when they finally decide to play football, it looks good. I don't think we have a lot of reasons to think he's particularly bad at it. But it's hard to say. Matty Brown would probably give you a better answer here. I'm sure Matty Brown would tell you yes, because Matty Brown loves Shotty. But it's hard to say. But I really think a lot of it just stems from them wanting to keep it close to the vest early on.
All right, Evan, I'm coming to you next. We've got a question from Grant Resnick. Thanks for being a patron, Grant. Should we be concerned about our pass rush after Ziggy Ansah and Jadeveon Clowney's performance this week?
That's a really good question. Yes, since those are two fairly big names, I think we came into this season, hey, we just traded for Clowney. Hey, we signed Ansah, in the offseason and free agency. Hey, we drafted LJ Collier. Jaron Reed is still on suspension. But I think we should be concerned. And maybe this is an irrational take right now, but I think our best pass rusher is Quentin Jefferson right now. And I know that sounds very crazy to say, but I feel like Clowney has made an impact. I don't know how many sacks he has on the season, but he felt like he was noticeably silent during the Saints game. Honestly, I didn't really notice anything from him. I haven't gotten a chance to go back and rewatch the coach's film on either of those yet, so I will preface by saying that. But I think it is a concerning pattern, at the start. Let's see how it goes over the next few games. But I think Clowney's, immediate impact the first few games has been noticeable and definitely credible. Ansah is somebody who I'm really going to be watching.
Yeah, and I mean, I think one thing I'll just add there is opponents do matter in those situations more than maybe we want to admit. I think there's also is some nerd data on this that pass rush is a little less consistent than pass protection in some cases. Saints have one of the best pass protecting offensive lines in football, and actually Pittsburgh also has one of the best pass protecting offensive lines in football. So I'll be curious to see how the Seahawks play, from a pass rush perspective when they face some different opponents. This week is a good place to start. The Cardinals are not one of the best pass protecting offensive lines in football. So let's see how that turns around. Rapid fire through a couple of these. Neil Cruz asks, what's it going to take Pete to run the 2015-2016 offense, more losses, different offensive coordinator, or does Pete have to be gone? So I'll take this one. I mean, I think there's a misunderstanding about the 2015-16 offense, and I think you're really talking about the second half of 2015. That's when we always refer back to. That was a lot of quicker passing, but there's also misperceptions about what that offense was. People think, the Seahawks passed a lot more. The Seahawks actually rushed more often in the second half of that year in the last 8 games than they did in the first 8 games. Thomas Rawls was a huge part of that offense and how they were playing. And what was going on was a lot, again, different types of passes. They were doing a lot of twists with Doug Baldwin and Tyler Lockett against man defense. And I think they also benefited from facing some pretty shitty defenses, to be honest, during that stretch as well. So I think there's some things to that are urban legend. There's other parts of it that certainly are frustrating. And we talked about it in last week's pod. They actually showed the closest thing to it last week in Pittsburgh in the second half. And it was different. It was against his own defense, but it was quick passing. And I think we saw a little bit more of it this past week when they weren't fumbling the ball or doing something stupid. That's why Russell, they have the Saints have a really good defensive line, and they had no sacks and a couple quarterback hits. And the only reason that was the case is because Russell was getting rid of the ball pretty quickly. So I do think there's some evidence that they're moving in that direction. If you're asking, are they going to need, in order to run a Sean McVay offense or an Andy Reid offense where they need a different coach? Probably. I mean, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of evidence so far that Pete values those coaches, but we'll see. All right. Let's grab one more question and then we'll talk about next week. Jeff, through 3 games, this is from David Goldberg. Thanks for being a patron, David. Through 3 games, which players would you say have been the biggest positive surprise and which have been the biggest disappointment?
Positive surprise, I would have to say offensively, I would go Will Dissly and I guess DK Metcalf. I think Dissly, just coming off that injury that has ruined careers, looks like an ascending guy. He's looked like he's completely built off what he was doing last year, and the fact they traded Nick Vannett away and they're comfortable just to roll with him and Luke Wilson, I think that says a lot about him. He's looked really impressive. DK, we've gone over the stats and how good he's looked as a 21-year-old rookie. I think all of us thought he would start really slow. And I think the fact that he was able to just make I don't think they win either of the first 2 games without DK's contribution. So that's been a very pleasant surprise. Defensively, I believe Evan mentioned this in his last answer. I think it has to be Quentin Jefferson. Quentin Jefferson has taken a giant leap forward in the contract year. He's been their best pass rusher. He's, I think, 6th in the NFL in pass rush win rate by ESPN in interior defensive lineman. He looks like a really, really improved player, and he started to show signs of it last year, and he's been really consistent. I think from the disappointing end, I think Michael Kendricks would be my answer. He was a guy, he was kind of moving to a new position, playing a different linebacker spot. And based on what he looked like in preseason and based on how he looked last year, I assumed he would just jump into that role and have no problem. But he's missed a lot of tackles. He's whiffed a lot more than I would have guessed. He hasn't really made a lot of impact plays. I've been pretty discouraged with his play. I know they've been playing three linebackers a lot more to get him on the field. And I guess offensively, my disappointing player, I guess, is Dwayne Brown. And it's not really a knock on him. He was one of their best players last year. He was an all-pro level player, and he's been just a guy this year. Mm-hmm. And for them to be good, they need him. And one last thought, I've had enough of John Brown. Stop giving him snaps and looks. I sent to Nathan last week and framed that tweet. I'm done with John Brown. Let's give those snaps to Ursua, something. I don't want to see him anymore.
Yeah.
Give him to Gary Jennings.
Yeah, goodbye, Gary Jennings. Go ahead. Were you going to say, Nathan?
No, nothing. That was my joke.
Did I steal all the answers there?
You did. And folks that didn't see, Gary Jennings was cut today. We've got Luke Wilson back. Nick Vanette was traded for a 5th-round pick, which, by the way, add it to the list of great moves by John Schneider. There's no way Nick Vanette was coming back next year to get a 5th-round pick. That's not a high pick, but that's high-ish, and especially from a team like it's either Pittsburgh's or it's Jacksonville's that they got for when they traded that to Pittsburgh for Josh Dobbs, the backup quarterback. Both of those teams, that could be pretty close to a low 4th-round pick, the way it'll work out if those teams are not very good this year. So, yeah, great move there. Before you drop off, Evan, you're going to the game this weekend in Arizona. You mentioned, I think, that there's going to be a get-together for Seahawks fans. Seahawks fans always show up big in Arizona. It's one of the best places to go watch a Seahawks game on the road. If you haven't already, highly recommend doing it. Where are folks meeting up?
Yeah, so pregame festivities are happening at Salt, which is a Mexican bar. Amazing margaritas, amazing tacos, Mexican food. It's to die for. So that's just like 2 minutes north of the stadium physically. So pregame festivities, a ton of Seahawks fans will be there. I know the Seahawkers Booster Club is doing a huge sponsored party event there. They're really taking out the whole place. So I think Wifey and I will stop by there for sure. There's also another Seahawks bar in Scottsdale that people is literally owned by Seahawks fans, and there's Seahawks gear everywhere. There's no Arizona Cardinals gear whatsoever. It's called the Skeptical Chemist. It's just under the 101 loop on Bell Road in Scottsdale. Skeptical Chemist, Seahawks bar. Highly recommend it. If you're looking to watch the rest of the games on Sunday, or just drop by for a bite to eat on Saturday night, that's a great location too. So those are the two places I would absolutely make sure to hit if you are looking for Seahawks specific events and parties.
And other thing before you go, what's your expectations about the game this weekend?
My expectations are, and I don't have to go, by the way. I'm good to stay. But okay. My expectations are that they should absolutely stomp the Cardinals. The Cardinals are not a good football team. Yes, Kyler Murray is exciting. I think he's going to be a good NFL quarterback. Yes, they have Larry Fitzgerald. Yes, they have David Johnson, but Patrick Peterson is suspended, I believe, for the first 6 games. Russell Wilson should absolutely pick on these corners and defensive backs. I really, really would like to see, a total blowout game like the Raiders game from 2018. That would warm my heart, so we're not freaking out all day. So those are my hopes.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to take us back from the Cardinals game. I was in a rush because Evan, misled me in the chat. But I want to ask a different question on look, in a couple weeks, Jaron Reed is due off the suspended list. That'll be, after. So the Seahawks play Sunday. They also play next Thursday. So they play what is today? Well, tomorrow's going to be Thursday. They're going to play 2 games in the next 7 days, right? And then they play in Cleveland the week after that. And then you got Jaron Reed coming back and potentially Phil Haynes coming back. Assume they're both back. How much of a different, like, how much better, if at all, do you think the Seahawks are when those 2 guys join the team? And Nathan, I want to start with you.
I love your Phil Haynes excitement. I don't think he probably plays this year. Potty's probably going to get hurt, or Fluke is going to get hurt at some point, and so maybe. But even then, like, Posick looked okay. So I think it's unlikely that we see much of Haynes this year. Although I'd be happy. I think if we do see him this year, that's probably a really good sign for him. I think Jaron Reed, that's going to be huge. I haven't been paying like too close of attention to Monet. He's not getting a ton of snaps, about 20 or so a game. PFF is not particularly impressed. He does have a couple hurries, so there's that. But I think you start shifting those snaps over to Jaron Reed, and that could be huge, especially since they want to do a bunch of twists and stuff with Clowney. So if you're starting to have a Quentin Jefferson, assuming Ansah kind of shakes some of the rest off, Clowney, Reed, maybe Green's working in there too a little bit. That sounds a lot better than Al Woods or Monet or any of the other guys, any of the defensive tackles that could swap in there. So I think Reed will be a big improvement. Haynes, I doubt we see.
Yeah, the Reed thing is really where I was most focused. Haynes is also probably going to come back. I don't know that he's going to make a big difference, but the Reed thing I have some question about. I mean, Quentin Jefferson's taking a lot of those snaps right now. You'd like to think that they're better off with Reed, but Poona Ford, Al Woods, and Quentin Jefferson are actually doing a pretty good job as a 3-man rotation inside. If Reed comes back, I'm just wondering like how that plays out. And
the cool thing about Jefferson right now is he's playing a lot of end too, and he's looking good at it. So you don't necessarily have to take. I mean, that answers a lot of your questions with Ansah too. Like, what do you do with him? How much do you want to play him? If you can be rotating, Clowney, Quentin Jefferson, and Green in kind of more base situations at end, and then you have Reed and Poona and at defensive tackle, and you can start to slide guys inside like Q Jeff or like Green, and then you have a nickel package of Ansah and Cloudy on the outside. Then I think that starts to look pretty functional, really. And I mean, Ansah was pretty disappointing. It's first game back. I think Pete said his first game in almost a year or something like that. But so I think that you can be hopeful that he'll get better. But I think that they'll figure that out pretty easily, really, with how well Jefferson's playing both inside and out.
Jeff, a question for you on the play of Russell Wilson so far, and it's not just about Russell; it's about the way they're using him. But through the first 3 games of the season, he has his highest pass rating he's ever had through the first 3 games, 119.6. He's tied for the most touchdowns with 7, which, by the way, last year was the other time he had 7 touchdowns. So both years with Brian Schottenheimer. Most yards he's ever thrown through the first 3 games, 902. Highest completion rate, 71.4. He's been sacked 8 times, which is, believe it or not one of the highest totals in the first 3 games of the year. He's averaging 8.6 yards per attempt, which is the highest other than the 2013 season when he had a 9.1 yards per attempt. So pretty much across the board, he is playing better than he's ever played statistically. What do you see? Like, what does that mean to you in terms of where the Seahawks can go from here?
Well, the incredible thing is he's doing it with a pass protection unit that's been pretty terrible. And so if the pass protecting gets better, he can almost improve, because all year Pete's Pete just said he looked remarkably better in training camp. I think your reports were the same. And he's been playing out of his mind. Like, he's been very, very good in all 3 games. Yeah, he missed a couple throws last week that could have changed the game. That Lockett pass in the end zone was pretty tough. But he had some. But I think he's playing. I think this is as good as he ever played, other than that 2015 stretch run. And this might be more impressive considering he's acclimating like an entirely new group of receivers. Pass protection's been pretty terrible, and I think the stuff they've been doing in the quick game really suits his strengths. And if they could do a little more tempo and get him going like they were in the second half of the Pittsburgh game and kind of what happened last game at the end, that really suits his strengths. And yeah, that like the deep passing game and the play action stuff hasn't worked as well, but the way he's playing right now, just let him keep rolling. He's been an MVP candidate in my opinion.
You had a big smirk on your face, Nathan. What were you smiling about?
Things completely unrelated to what we're talking about. So I saw a funny tweet, and then I was making fun of Evan in the chat.
Those sound like fun things. I'm just keeping people updated on the Mariners. They are on pace through 7 innings to be the first team in Major League history to be no-hit 3 times in one season.
We're number 1. We're number 1.
Oh, so bad.
Wow.
So bad. All right. So, one other thing I wanted to ask about, Trey Flowers. So I kind of was surprised how much people were freaking out about the idea that Trey Flowers might not play in this game the past weekend. Like, remember, he twisted an ankle, he didn't practice, and they're like, "Oh my God, Akeem King might have to play. We're messed up." Maddie Brown and I were talking a little bit, and Maddie's like, "You're wrong. It would be a major blow if Trey Flowers can't play." Can you guys help me? I look at Trey Flowers. I don't see that anybody is a major drop off from Trey Flowers. I'm not seeing great corner play from Trey Flowers. And if you guys are, I'd love to hear about it. And what's the evidence to back it up? Anybody?
He has been a little up and down. I mean, I think that you always kind of have to assume that there's a reason why Trey Flowers or why any player is playing over somebody else.
Sure.
Coaches are frequently wrong there. But I think that if Akeem King was better than Flowers, I think that you'd see Akeem King starting. He played better against Pittsburgh. PFF backs that up. And that was, the week that we were coming off there. So, and their corner situation is not great to begin with. So I don't know. This is like the Ifedi thing. I don't know.
But that's the thing, right? We're talking there that I think all of us do feel like there might be a better player sitting behind Ifedi. And for whatever reason, he's not playing. It may not be true. When Fant started, he wasn't particularly great last year. He did get a chance to start and did not do a great job. I'm not saying Akeem King's great by any stretch, but what is it about Trey Flowers that has people standing for him? I don't get it. Yes, he used to be a safety and he converted to corner, but so what? Is he good? That's all I care about. Is he good? And I thought in that game he was not very good, and he has not. I don't think he's been very good this year. So I'm just confused.
Does it feel like he ever gives up the big play? Because it doesn't feel like it does to me. Maybe I'm completely
If you're
wrong.
Asking, does he stay behind, on top? Yes. And I think, in fact, the Seahawks this year are one of the best defenses in limiting opponents' explosive plays. I think they're 5th in the NFL in limiting explosive passes and maybe 4th in explosive rushes. So, yeah, they're doing that part of their defense well. And they did hold the Saints to 265 yards, and I think they held the Steelers to 275 yards. So they've had some respectable defensive performances, even if they've given up points. The average the average starting field position for a touchdown drive against the Seahawks this year is midfield. The defense has been in really bad shape in terms of what they're trying to defend. But I guess what you're saying, Evan, is he doesn't get burned deep, and that's what makes him good.
I wouldn't say it's not what makes him good. It's just relative to expectations. Like Tedrick Thompson is an example of a player who, like, gives up that deep ball, gives up that big play. I think in relation to the expectations I have for Trey Flowers, it's pretty much don't give up touchdowns. It's fine if, if you're okay in coverage in the underneath and you give up slants and, they might attack you a little bit because you're not as good as Shaquille, definitely. But I think relative to my expectations for him, I think he's doing just fine.
All right. Last question, then we'll get into the Cardinals game and wrap up. So the Seahawks signs Adrian Colbert off their practice squad safety to the 53-man roster. A number of teams are looking to sign him off of the Seahawks practice squad. That's why they made the move. Cut Gary Jennings to make room for him. Lano Hill, sounds like, according to Pete, is going to hold on to the starting role, even though Tedrick's coming back. Anyone here have a sense for what they're like? Marquise Blair, we're not hearing anything about him potentially stepping forward. What do you guys see happening at the safety position over the next 2 or 3 games? Do you see any change? Let's start there. Do you see, other than Lano Hill and Bradley McDougald, do you see anyone else potentially stepping into a starting role over the next 3 games? Jeff, start with you.
Based on the information we were getting today, no. I think McDougald, as long as he can stay healthy, he battled some injuries last game. He's the best safety they have, so he'll be on the field. And Lano's been fine, I guess. He hasn't been great. He hasn't been awful. So I don't think Colbert. I think Colbert just moving up is just purely asset management. I think he's more of a long-term play. And Blair is a position where he's overcoming that tough start where he had to miss all that time. He's playing catch up, and it's a spot where they like security. They like people being assignment correct rather than the flashy big plays. And I think it's just going to be Hill and McDougald for a while.
Nathan or Evan, you guys see anything different?
The only thing I would say, sorry, Nathan, go ahead.
No, go for it.
The only thing I had a concern about, and maybe Pete dispelled some of those concerns today, was the Bradley McDougald ankle issue. But it seems like he might be okay. I'd be worried about that flaring up. McDougald isn't injury prone, but he has had some injuries over his career, and there might be an opening for Marquise there if that lingers.
I just kind of want to take a moment and go in the Wayback Machine to 2 months ago. See, I think Evan already knows what's coming here. Early preseason, and I remember a couple of us on here were talking about, boy, hasn't been a real great start for Marquise Blair, has it? And somebody was like, no, he's great. He's amazing. He's going to be fantastic. And it's honestly pretty concerning at this point that...
Oh, stop it.
What do you think of Tedrick Thompson?
What do you think of
second round pick? And
early second round pick.
Really crappy safety in front of him. 2 crappy safeties, and he can't sniff the field.
And one of them got hurt and has missed time. And they're activating another safety off the practice squad.
This is like the Jahri Evans experience. Remember when the Seahawks signed Jahri Evans and he was playing on cables third string? Do you remember that experience? Marquise Blair, I'll tell you right now, is a better safety than Delano Hill and Tedrick Thompson at free safety.
Jahri Evans had Pro Bowl or all pro years behind him.
He was 34 years old when he was signed by the team. The only reason he isn't starting right now is because Pete doesn't trust him to know the playbook. I think
that can't be right, because Pete tells me that everyone always competes. So we know the problem is that he's just worse than everybody else. They had to activate a practice squad guy because they can't trust him.
This is the thing, and my wife just texted me.
If Colbert plays before Marquise Blair,
that's bad.
That's a sign, Evan. You got to admit.
But I would be shocked if that happened.
I would not.
I really don't. You would? Really?
I would not be shocked.
You think they would?
Adrian Colbert, he started 7 or 8 games for the 49ers 2 years ago and was pretty good.
And then followed it up with a completely shitty year.
But he can't beat out Tedrick. He can't beat out Tedrick. He can't beat out Leno Hill.
You're assuming he's not beating him. You're assuming it's like a skill or talent issue. This is not a skill or talent issue. Every time Marquise Blair has stepped on the field, he has made plays. Every single time.
LJ Collier. Well, first of all, I don't think he has. I don't think that's true.
Did you watch him in preseason when he actually got time?
He played a little bit in the New Orleans game, and it's hard to remember because he was invisible. LJ Collier has gotten on the field.
He's not good. I'm pretty sure.
He's not. Cody Barton's gotten on the field. DK doing some stuff on the field. Ugo's gotten on the field.
This is a coaching misstep. Marquise Blair, I'm telling you right now, should be starting at free safety.
Did you know who Marquise Blair was before they drafted him?
Fuck no, I didn't.
Where does this confidence come from?
Did you not see him play in preseason?
I saw him give up a touchdown.
2.
I saw him give up a big penalty because he keeps hitting people in the head when he's not supposed to. I mean, I get it. Like, Marquise Blair is kind of like the DK thing in a lot of ways. Like, you can watch him in college and you can say, oh, I get that. Dude, like, hits like crazy and he's pretty athletic and stuff. But, like, it's not working right now. And that doesn't mean that he's doomed. It doesn't mean he's a bust. But, like, it's not working right now. And
I will say, Evan, I believe that Marquise Blair is very different situation than LJ Collier. I think Marquise Blair has already shown that he's got upside to be an NFL starter with some of the plays that he did make in preseason. And that more than likely the things that are holding him back are exactly what you said. You know, I said as well that I think his command of the playbook and his discipline and how he's playing, that Pete doesn't trust him yet. And that he could just be a guy that starts next year or, you know, emerges later.
And that's the thing.
That's okay.
Nathan, it's been 3 freaking games.
But if he's half as good as you say he is, he'd be on the field.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an issue. It is a little bit of an issue.
Yeah.
It's not an issue. An opportunity is going to come, and he will seize the moment. He is a good player. He has upside. This is a playbook schematic memorization issue. That's all this is. Pete Carroll went on record like saying, like, you know, he made some errors in coverage or whatever, and I just feel more confident with Tedrick or whatever the fuck he said.
I'm going to come out and say it right now. Playbooks matter, Evan. You got to learn them.
I think the bigger story by far is, you guys tell me, when's the next game that LJ Collier is active for? First round pick.
We lost Evan. He got so mad about the Blair takes that we lost.
I mean, you got Reed coming back in a few weeks. He's gonna take a roster spot from some defensive lineman, and then he's gonna take an active roster spot from another. I think Collier already is off the active roster. He could be 2 spots off the active roster when Reed comes back. I don't know if he suits up for another game the rest of the year.
I think you have to. Oh.
Uh-oh.
You know why I turned off my video? My wife came in and was like, shut the hell up! You're yelling on the podcast!
Don't snitch, Evan.
Not wrong. I think you have to look at the Collier thing as a redshirt year. It's defensive line has one of the biggest learning curves of any position, especially a guy with low athleticism. And
Dude, come on, you're already starting off the. I mean, that's what you got.
I know, but like, how shitty was Quinton Jefferson his first year? Even Jaron Reed, like those guys stunk their first years. They didn't show anything. Like, I don't know if Collier's good or not, but like, I don't think him stinking in his first 3 games where he had no training camp is a big thing to me. Like, defensive linemen take years.
I don't know. I see.
I'm not saying he's good. I'm just saying I think you're misjudging if you think he's bad now. Like,
I think if you see a defensive lineman and he looks like he's not an NFL athlete and he was a first-round pick, that's concerning from the jump, whether or not he's effective or not. But like when he's slow off the ball and just slow in general and not powerful, and I don't know. I was pretty unimpressed. He can be ineffective, but I just saw like some pretty concerning physical attributes in that game against Pittsburgh, and I think the coaches did as well. That's why he was inactive the next week. So, I mean, seriously, a first round pick to be inactive potentially for the rest of the year would be a really big deal. I don't care. I can't remember a situation like that. Golden Tate being inactive as a second round pick for the first week was a big deal back in 2010.
So the first year LJ Collier would play a full football season in the NFL as an active player, he would be 25 years old.
Oh God.
I'm not kidding.
These guys stink at first round picks. It's embarrassing.
They do.
How can it be this bad? Penny.
I don't know.
I'm kind of with Jeff on this though. Like I think the injuries and everything, I'm surprised that he is as raw as it turns out he is. I don't think that was something that really showed on tape at you. But one of the things that's really clear is he overextends himself really badly. And I think, I mean, and that's a big thing that the offensive linemen are taking advantage of him on. And that's something that we saw them working on with him in training camp. If he can fix that, that's sapping all of his power. He can't be a powerful player playing the way he does right now. And so if he can fix that, then we might see that power rusher that you saw when he was at TCU. There's no guarantee that he's going to fix that, but considering the amount of time that he's missed so far, I think that you can hold out a little hope that he'll get the footwork and the technique down to flash the power he had. Because while he wasn't athletic and he didn't show athleticism in TCU, he was like tough to handle. He made splash plays. He was, a big, mean, strong dude, and all that's gone right now, which is surprising.
Yeah. All right, so let's turn our attention to this Arizona game quickly, and then we'll wrap. So, do any of you expect the Seahawks to lose this game? Speak up if you do.
No.
Nathan?
Nope.
Actually,
what?
Actually, if Pete Carroll coaches like he did this last Sunday, they could.
Do we know if Carroll?
I'm not kidding though.
Next week by this game.
Well,
if Pete Carroll is Pete Carroll this week, you're saying that they could lose.
Tricky. Last Sunday was not a typical Pete Carroll day. That was exceptionally bad.
Yeah.
Concussion.
If Michael Dixon punts like a grade schooler, they might lose as well.
Carson can't fumble. I'm tired of Carson fumbling.
I mean, does anybody here think that they should bench Carson?
If freaking Penny is healthy,
don't be a second guesser. If you think they should bench Carson, I want to hear it right now.
Yes, if Penny is healthy. Yes. Absolutely. Send a message. He's been a complete liability. I love Chris Carson. He's better than Rashad Penny, but if Rashad Penny is healthy, he hasn't had fumbling issues. Ball security is paramount, especially for this offense.
Send a message thing. Like that, like Carson doesn't know not to fumble. Like
he's got to freaking earn his job back, man. Like I've lost trust in him. Pete Carroll should be losing trust in him.
Evan.
What?
I agree with you.
Wow.
Oh, really? Boomers unite. Hell yeah.
No, but like boomer in this. I'm not.
We're the boomers. We're the boomers.
I'm a Gen Xer. So, I think that if Penny was healthy, and I don't think they're gonna play him this week. He's got a hamstring issue. They got a game Thursday. I think they're gonna save him for Thursday. But I think that 3 fumbles in 3 weeks, and say it's 4 fumbles in 3 weeks, and you got a first round pick who has Penny's done well when he's had the ball this year. I think that it is justified to say Penny takes the rock and Carson's got to earn his spot back. I don't think you like send a message, but I do think that the same way Tedrick like needed to sit Like I love Chris Carson, and I think he's much better than Rashad Penny. I don't know how you can just keep handing the ball to a guy that has almost lost 3 games.
How does Carson earn it back? Let's say you go that route.
He doesn't. Penny what happens is either Penny takes the rock and looks great, or Penny doesn't. Like, the offense just looks a lot worse with Penny, and they're like, okay, now we're going to go back to Carson because the team's better off with us taking that risk. But if you let a guy, I mean, the guy's just going to keep fumbling, and there's no chance for a guy that's playing pretty well to step forward. I mean, that's what happens in sports. Like, somebody creates an opening, somebody else steps into it, and either they take advantage of the opportunity or not. And if Penny does, more power to him. And if he doesn't, then Carson takes it back.
Hey, Nathan, you were talking earlier complaining about always compete. This is a prime example. Ball security is paramount for this team. Chris Carson has ball security issues right now. Reverse the roles. Give Penny 70% of the carries. I'm not saying bench Carson. Give Carson like 15 to 20% of the carries. Keep him active rotationally in the game as a change of pace back and see if he can regain his trust. But I think in the meantime,
let's say you give Penny 70% of the carries, and the offense isn't as good, but it doesn't like fall off a cliff or anything. When does Carson get to take his 70? When does Carson come back and take the 70%?
When they have sufficient confidence that he's not going to fumble the ball. I want to see a few games.
When is that? How do they measure that?
I'd like to see more than, I don't know. How many fumbles does he have in 45 carries? He has 3 fumbles.
Yeah.
I'd like to see 60, 75 carries without a fumble. I'd like to see ball security.
So you're going to go 6 games? 6+ games, 6 to 8 games with Carson getting just like 30.
Yeah.
And then what? Like what is
Nathan? Let's turn this around for a second. Do running backs matter?
Not particularly.
Do running backs matter when they're fumbling?
Yeah, fumbles matter.
So then why would you argue? Why wouldn't you just say, like, yeah, send a guy in there, another guy in there. It doesn't matter who he is as long as he's a running back. And if he's not fumbling, then he's better than the guy that is.
Because, well, I think that running backs don't particularly matter. I think there are ways.
Oh, really?
No, I mean, there's ways to differentiate running backs. Sure. My thing here is that what's going to happen is Penny's going to take over, and he's not as good of a player. But running backs don't particularly matter, and so the offense isn't going to be significantly worse. And so you're going to run out there with the worst player for a while, and for what?
I mean, are we sure he's worse?
Pretty sure.
We haven't seen Penny with a full load, though.
Because he's bad. Because he hasn't earned
it. No. Because Chris Carson has been historically good.
We've seen Penny looking like he's running with a load in his pants. I've seen that a few times. Like, no, but like, in the ways that we can measure running backs, like which ones are better than other ones, like Carson ranks really well.
Yeah.
And so Carson's like I don't know if he's a meaningfully better player because, again, running backs don't really matter. But, like, I don't think there's much question that he is a better player than Penny. And I don't know what, like, if it's a send a message thing, that's just stupid because, like, Carson gets it. I'm sure no one is angrier right now than Chris Carson. Yeah. But, like, if you're actually going to bench him because you think he has a problem, then, like, there needs to be, like, some approach and some, like, measurable.
But that's the thing. I don't believe in the whole sending a message thing. But the way I would handle this, if I was in the leadership position, is I would give the next player in the situation the opportunity to step forward. Carson would take the snaps that Penny's taking. Penny's getting plenty of reps, so it's not like Carson's benched. But he then gets a chance to build his confidence with fewer reps, less chances to fumble, and then he gets to his 40 or 50 carries without a fumble, and you're ready for him to reascend to the top spot. But I think just continuing to run him out there, knowing that, he's had this issue and you're going to have every player, like anytime they see him, they're going to just be keyed in on it more than ever. I don't even know if you're really setting him up for success. He's going to have to be abnormally good at holding onto the ball for the next few games to not have this happen again. Or he's going to start changing the way he runs. He's going to start going down earlier to avoid, a big punch out.
Or he could run out of bounds like Christine Michael and then get himself cut a year later.
These are things that could happen. All right, look, well, everyone thinks they're going to win this game, that we should win this game. Folks talk about the stadium being a house of horrors for the Seahawks because of the Super Bowl that they lost down there, because of Sherman's injury and Cam's injury and Earl's injury. And I get all that, but the Seahawks haven't lost there for like 6 years. They've tied that 6-6 game that was brutal, but they haven't lost in 6 years. And the Cardinals are one of the worst teams in football, even though they're dangerous. So, I guess the last question I have for the three of you, and then we'll wrap. Let's assume for a second the Seahawks win big. Let me put it a different way. What do you need to see this weekend to erase the memory of the Saints game and feel good about this team again? And I want to start with you, Evan.
20-plus point win. I want to see them dominantly win a game. The Seahawks are far better than the Cardinals. Top down, full through the entire roster. I don't think there's a position group that is better on the Cardinals than is on the Seahawks. I stumbled at running back for a second, but I think the combination of Carson and Penny is better than David Johnson. I want to see a dominant performance. Let's see a Raiders-like game from 2018.
Nathan?
Yeah, I mean, if I don't need like super dominant, if they can just play a clean game, get through it without too many boneheaded things or major mistakes or anything like that. Keep up the quick passing game that they've had going so far. I think really you can look at some of the stuff that they did on offense in that New Orleans game, and it's encouraging. And so in some ways, they just kind of got to keep the offensive part of it rolling and then clean up the rest. And I think that you will end up with one of those Raiders-type performances. So just play a clean game, look prepared, come out maybe a little angry. That'd be kind of cool. But I think that if this is another like Steelers type game, except for maybe, again, wipe out the fumbles that made it closer than it needed to be, then I'm going to be really happy. And I think that, you're 3-1 at that point and you've got a lot to look forward to.
Jeff?
Yeah, I agree with Nathan. And I think they need to play a cleaner game. They've looked good at times on defense. The first half last week was pretty good for the most part. But I want to see them kind of play all three phases well, the punting, the special teams coverage. But I want to see the pass rush get going. I know we talked a lot about Ansah. He had a tough game. He was going up against Ryan Ramczyk, one of the better right tackles in the league, a guy the Seahawks famously passed on for Malik McDowell. But I'd like to – Arizona is one of the worst pass protecting lines in the NFL. We're going to see our old buddy Sweezy. They got some injuries. They're not good up there. If they can't get going against this team, unless they're getting the ball out at a crazy speed, that would be pretty alarming to me because I just want to see things they can build on. I know they were 2-0, but that first game, that was a tough watch. I know Russell was able to do some nice things at the end, but I want to just see things that they can build on and reasons to be optimistic because last week they just looked awful at times, other than the second half surge in the passing game. They just looked bad too much and made too many stupid mistakes. And yeah, I don't care really how much they win by or if it's comfortable or not. I just want to see things that I can believe in and things that I believe is transferable for the rest of the season.
Yeah. And I think those are all great points across the board for you guys. And I'll add an odd one, but I mean, it's definitely not the top one, but I'd like to see Michael Dixon has just been not good. Like he just hasn't been that good. And he hasn't been that good all the way through preseason. And we kind of thought, oh, maybe he was like doing things intentionally so they could grade players on punt coverage or trying some weird things out. But he has not been good. He had one game-changing kick in Pittsburgh. That was a really big deal. It was like a 60-yard kick. He kicked out of bounds, flipped the field, helped them get a turnover. Didn't help them, but when they got a turnover, they were set up to score. Like that's his one big moment. But he's not been good. The Seahawks are like 29th in the NFL in net punt right now, net punting. They were like number 1 last year, so for much of the season. So I really would like to see him, like he is a mistake eraser. When they have a bad series and they do something stupid and he can kick it 60 yards and pin them back or pin a team back inside the 10, makes the job a lot easier for the defense, which then makes the job easier for the offense. And they're just not getting that advantage. And it should be a freaking simple advantage. It's one guy. He has to kick a freaking ball. He's supposed to be good at it. So, like, do it. I would like to see that happen. And then certainly pass rush. I mean, Russell seems to always play well in Arizona. So I expect to see a big game from him. But, yeah, the pass rush has been absent. And Clowney has looked not just, just not impactful, to be quite honest. After the first 20 plays of his Seahawks career where he looked like a major difference maker, he's just not been. So I'm hoping that we see a little bit from Ansah and Clowney that give us reason to be hopeful there. So, all right, guys, we're going to wrap there. We took a long time tonight. Appreciate it. Congratulations to Jeff on your big victory in softball. That's awesome.
Yeah, I guess.
And we will be back with you guys for a post-game show this Sunday. Evan won't be able to join, so it may be, a little more sane, but maybe a little less entertaining, who knows, than normal. But we'll be back Sunday after the game. And until then, please join over on patreon.com/hawkblogger. Give us a follow on Twitter, on at Real Hawk Talk, on YouTube. Subscribe. Give us reviews. Give us goodness. We'd really appreciate it. And take care. Enjoy the week, and go Hawks.